Hello, today I want to show you how to create a Sudoku grid. So currently you can see my game, which is not released yet. It's called Sudoku, it's simple 2D Sudoku game. I'll be releasing it on the Android devices. Once the game will be ready, I'll place the link to it below this video. So today what I want to show you is how to create this Sudoku grid. So we'll be able to create the grid and display the number on them. Okay, so let's get started. So I have created new project, 2D project in the Unity. So this is a sample scene. We're going to create the Sudoku grid here. So first thing, I will just go to the file, build settings, and I will switch my platform to be Android. Switch platform. Okay, I have a nicely looking camera by default. So this is a 16 by 9. Okay, let's switch back to the scene. First thing we will do is in our hierarchy, I will right click UI canvas. So we're gonna add the empty canvas. Okay. Then inside our asset, I will create 2 more folders. So create folder. First one will be graphics. The next one will be scripts. And then one more, prefabs. Okay, so this is the standard folder I'm usually creating for my projects. So the first thing we need to do, we need to actually create some scripts. So go inside the scripts folder, and I will create just 2 C# scripts. First one will be grid. So this is going to be implementation of our Sudoku grid, and the next one will be grid square. Okay, so the grid square will hold the value for the specific grid and the texture to display, and whatever like you want to put in this class. So let's open this script. Okay, inside our grid script, let's delete this comment, and we need a few public variables. So the first one will be public int, and will be columns will be equal to 0 by default. The next one will be public int rows. So we want to specify from the editor how many columns and how many rows we want to have, and then of course we want to pass the game object, so public for our square. So public game object grid square will be okay, the grid square, and then we want to store all our squares inside the list. So private list of the game objects, grid squares will be equal to new list of the game objects. Okay. So right below the update function, I will create the private function. So private void create grid. Okay, so this function will create our grid. Below that, we want to create the function private void spawn grid squares. So this function will actually create our squares, and then below that function we want to position our squares. Private void set square positions. Okay, so inside our create function, create grid, we want to call this spawn grid squares. So first of all, we want to spawn the grids, and then we want to set the positions for them. Okay, and we want to call this create grid function from our start method. Okay, we want to make sure that our grid square, because this is the type of the game object, has a grid square script attached to it. So the one way we can do it, we can actually do small if statement inside the start method and then pass the grid square dot get component grid square to be equal to null. We want to debug dot log error and then we want to actually just put this information that we grid square okay, so we want to just display the information in case we forgot to attack the script. Okay, let's implement this function. So first of all, we want to spawn our grid squares. So how we want to position our data is we want to position our first grid here, then second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then we want to go to the next line. Is that when we're going to switch to the next line is depend how many columns we have specified. So if we can display the grid like 9 by 9 or 5 by 4, and this script will work out automatically where to position the squares. So it's going to be 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. Okay, so inside this function I will create two for loops. So for int to be equal to 0, row is less than the rows which we pass, and then row plus plus. Okay, and then we want to have another loop. Column will be equal to 0. It's less than the columns. Column plus plus. Okay, and then now we want to do grid. Now we want to actually instantiate our prefab. So grid square dot add. So we want to push straight away to the list, and then we want to instantiate grid square. I made a spelling mistake. Grid square. Okay. So first of all, we want to instantiate the grid square as a game object, and then put it to our list, which holding all of the squares. And then we want to actually assign this grid to be the parent of the object which holding the grid script. So to do that, we access the last element, so the element which we just added. So it's gonna be grid squares dot count -1. So this is the last element. Dot transform dot parent will be equal to this dot transform. So this is gonna be just a reminding. Okay, so we want to instantiate this this grid square as a child of the object which holding the script. Okay, so that's it for now for this spawn grid. So once all grids has been instantiated, we want to set the position. So we want to position them all. So in order to do that, in the set square position, I will create the for each loop for each, and then we want to get the game object square in grid squares. So we want to loop through all of the squares. Okay, and right above we want to create vector 2, and I'm gonna call it offset. So we know how much we want to offset the one grid from the other. So the offset.x will be equal to, first of all, we want to actually get the grid rectangle, because we're going to use the UI elements actually for our grids, so it can be scaled down based on our phone resolution. So var square rectangle will be equal to grid squares, and you want to get the first element dot get component transform. Okay, and then our offset x will be square rectangle dot rest dot width times square rectangle dot transform. So this is going to be the size of our sprite, and then we want to scale it based on the local scale. So local scale dot x, and we want to actually shift it a bit. So we want to I will create additional variable, so it's going to be every square offset. I don't have idea for any other name. You can name it whatever you like. So this variable will be public, so I will just add it right at the top. It's going to be vector2. Actually, we can make it float. So 0 then 0f. Okay. So we want to set this. So we want to put this every square offset to be public, so we can manipulate it from the inspector. And now we can assign our offset x, offset y. So I will just duplicate this line. I will change this offset x to be y. And then instead of the width, we want to get the height. And in the local scale, instead of the x, we want to get y. Okay. So this is how much we're going to shift every single square. And then inside our for each loop, we actually need one more variable. So we want to know which column currently we're displaying. So int column number will be equal to 0. Okay. And then right at the top, if the column number plus 1, so if the next column will be more than the columns, so we want to restart our column number to be equal to 0, so we're going to start from the beginning. Okay, and then we want to create two variables. So first one will be var so this is going to be our final x position. So we want to take the offset dot x times column number, and then we want to do the same for the y position, but we want to get the offset y, and then we want to have a row number as well, so which we didn't create yet. So let's create this variable as well. So below the column number, I will create int row number be equal to 0. Okay, and then we want to, every time we completed one row, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every time we completed the row, we completed, like we reach the maximum number of columns. We want to increase the row number count, okay, by 1. So we know we are on the next row. And then simple, we want to set the square position, so square dot, right, we want to do this inside our for each, square dot get component, we want to get the rest transform dot anchor position will be equal to new vector 3 we forgot to set the start position as well, so we want to know from which position we want to start our grid. So let's quickly fix it. So I will create right at the top, I will create the public. By the way, this every square offset need to be public as well, because we want to have access from the inspector. So public vector 3, and this is gonna be, actually we want to get the vector 2 because we want to do this in the 2D. So it's gonna be start position will be equal to new vector 2, okay, 00f 00f. So we want to get the start position, and inside our set square positions we want to get the start position.x plus position x offset, and then we want to get the position start position.y, the next parameter, minus position y offset. So we're gonna go down, and then of course we want to increase the column number, so column number plus plus. Okay, so this is our setting square positions. We actually want to create one more function. So inside our start method we want to assign the number to the square. So currently I will just right below I will just create another private void set grid number, set grid numbers. Okay, and before we implement this function, let's switch back to our grid square script. So inside our grid square we want to have a two public variables. First one will be public game object, so this is going to be our text for the specific square, and then we want to have a private int number will be equal to, let's say, 0. Okay, because in the Sudoku game we don't have a number 0, we want to have a numbers from 1 to 9. And then below the update method I will just create a void private, actually it's going to be public void display text, and this function will check if the number will be less or equals 0. We don't want to display anything, so number text dot get component, and you want to have the text component, but in order to use the text component we need to include the using unity engine.ui. Okay, so we can use text will be equal to, I will just pass empty string, otherwise number, okay, made a spelling mistake. Now otherwise we want to get this number text get component dot text will be equal to number dot toString. Okay, so we want to display the number, and then we want to have a two public method. So first one will be public void set number, int number, and then number will be equal to number, and you wanna, and I think that's that's it from this class. So let's save it and then go back to our grid square. Inside our set grid numbers function, we want to loop over all of the squares. So for each var square in grid squares, we want to do the square dot get component. We want to get the script, so grid square dot set number, and we want to actually pass the, let's for now just pass the random number. So I will use the random dot range, and remember that the random dot range will have a first number inclusive and the last number exclusive. So this is going to be range from 0 to 9. Okay, so whenever the number will be 0, we will not display anything. This is actually just for testing, and let's call this set grid number from the start method. Right below we're creating the grid. Okay, so I think that's it from the script. So let's switch back to the Unity, and let's now create our UI stuff. So onto our canvas, I will apply the grid script. Okay, so let's say we want to get the 9 columns and 9 rows, and the offset between all of the columns and the rows, let's say will be 2.5. You can change it wherever you like. I will set the start position to be minus 435 and then Y position 442. Okay, we need to have a grid square prefab. So let's create the prefab now. So on our canvas, I will right click UI image. So in our image, we have a rect transform. I will just remove this image from this component, this image component. And I will attach the grid square, and I will call it this object grid square. Grid square. Okay. So I will just click on this grid square, right click UI image. So this is going to be our image, and then I will right click again UI text. So this is going to be our text. So for now, let's not display anything. Okay, and I will make the color maybe black. Okay, so in our grid, just click on our grid. We need to pass the text number to the script. So I will just get this text and just drag and drop onto the text number. So we're gonna assign this text to be manipulated through the grid, through the script, and then onto our canvas. We need to actually pass this grid square prefab. So we do that in a minute. Let's first apply the graphics to our image. Okay, so I have just created the white rectangle in the Photoshop. It's simply just the white rectangle, 117 by 117. You can create it yourself, or if you wanna, I will put the link to download this rectangle if you are struggling with it. So we can just get it and use it if you like. So let's click on our grid square image, and then let's drag and drop this rectangle onto our source image. Okay, so we have our rectangle now assigned. Let's set the size of our rectangle transfer to be the same size as the texture, so will be 117 by 117. Okay, all of the rest of the parameters will stay the same. And then click on our grid square, and let's set the same size as our image. So I will just put the 117 and 117. Okay, now we have this grid square rectangle, which is here. We can actually position this. Let's click on the text, and let's set the width to be 117 and 117. And let's set this alignment to be in the middle and in the middle. And we can change the font size. I will put maybe 35. I think that looks okay. Okay, so we have our grid square. So now we can open the prefab folder and then drag and drop this grid square in the prefab. And then we can delete this grid square from here, from the scene. Okay, let's click on our canvas. And now in our canvas we can just apply this grid square prefab to the grid square onto our script. So I think we have almost everything ready. I will do one more thing. I will set the canvas color to be screen space camera. I will drag and drop my main camera onto it, and I will set the canvas color to be scale with screen size. I will set the size to be 946 by 2048, and then I will set here to be the match to be 0.45. So this is actually changing the resolution of the camera. You can manipulate this value, or you can make the grid square prefab a little bit smaller. We can actually put additional variable here to set the scale for our grid. I might do it in a minute. So let's just test it, how everything looks. So let's press play. Okay, so as you can see, we have our grid spawn. If we go to the scene, we have our 9x9 grids, but there is something wrong with this offset and with the scale. So let's quickly see. The scale for some reason is 185. So we're gonna manipulate the scale from the script. So go back to the script, go back to the grid. So I'll put additional variable right at the top, public float square scale will be equal to 1.0f. So that's going to be the default value. And let's go to our spawn grid square function. And inside this loop, we want to get this grid square. Grid squares. We actually want to copy this one as well. So we want to get the last one. Then transform dot local scale will be equal to new vector 3, and I will just pass this grid scale to be here. Okay, so we can set the scale for our grid from within the script. So let's save everything, go back to the Unity, click on the canvas, and let's set the square scale to be 0.9. Okay, press play. So we have our nicely looking Sudoku grid. So all of the values are currently 0. And let's see why. So go to the prefab grid square, see the text. So okay, the text is 0, the value is 0, so let's delete the value. We don't want to display anything. So we want to go back, save prefab, play. We don't have any number, so for some reason our function to assign the value is not working. I will open the grid. So we're calling this set grid function from the start. So let's go to our grid square script. And okay, so this is what's happened. We're not calling the display text from anywhere. So let's call this display text whenever we're setting the number. Okay, so in our set number function, we're going to call display text. So save everything, go back to Unity, press play. So yes, we have the random number displayed. I think the squares looks, the grid squares looks good. We can actually do one more thing. We can make the squares pressable. So if you want to do that, you can go to our grid square, and then instead of the inherit from the mono behavior, we can inherit from the selectable. So if you save the script now, you will see in our prefab grid square you have all of these normal colors. You can set the colors on the grid down. So the same is exactly the same script as you have in the normal bottom when you're creating the buttons. So the transition, I will change the color tint, and then we need to pass the target graphic. So target graphic, I will just grab this image and then drag and drop it onto the target graphic. And now we can set the highlight color. So I will set the highlight maybe to be like that. I will copy the value. So I want to have a highlight and the press color to be exactly the same. Okay. So let's press this arrow to save the prefab. Make sure you save it. And now when you press play, you can actually, you see, you can select the grid and you can press it. And I think our Sudoku grid is working fine. So if you want me to create the full tutorial how to create a Sudoku game, please leave the comments below. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing. As I mentioned at the beginning, I will put the link to my Sudoku game once we'll be ready. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode and it helped you create your own Sudoku game. So thank you for watching and see you again soon.